Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the biggest swing game of the year so far for Grant McCasland and the Red Raiders is upon us. We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today, and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. Wrapping up a week, man, heading into another busy weekend. We took a break from hoops yesterday to talk Red Raider football schedule, and we're diving back into that basketball pond here today as the Red Raiders are back in the LBK after a bit of a road stretch. You split those games with the win last weekend in Norman against the Sooners. You dropped one earlier in the week in Fort Worth against Texas Christian. And now it's the Cincinnati Bearcats, fitting the description of the next potential victim coming up. So I imagine the guys are glad to be back in the friendly confines of the USA and trying to get right and back on a new win streak.
Yeah, the Mahomes-Kelsey Bowl. You're right. Yeah, and it's weird because you haven't had a home game in 2 weeks. You know, it's been a minute. That BYU game is like way off, in the wobbly yonder there. But it's been a while since you've actually played at home. So it'll be good to get back. And again, the pressure is on the home team here to hold serve. You've got to, you've got a tough. I guess I'm just going to keep saying that. You got a tough stretch coming up. Yeah, no kidding.
Again and again,
everybody's got a tough stretch. But your next game is in Waco after this one, and you've got home games against Central Florida and Kansas on a Saturday, Monday next weekend. So 3 of your next 4 are at home. That's what I guess I was building up to, is that, and if you have any chance to actually contend for this conference championship, those are 3 games that you've got to win. I think I'm stating an obvious too, but yeah, Cincinnati. They're one of those teams that I know or have – I've watched a lot in the last couple of days, and I watched their game on Wednesday night versus West Virginia. But they're one of the teams, I guess, that I had a fewest amount of walking around knowledge. Yeah, I knew about Nick Van Exel and Kenyon Martin back in the day. I knew Bob Huggins used to coach there. Bob Huggins was actually in the building watching West Virginia beat Cincinnati the other night. So that's an interesting dynamic because I think he's still suing West Virginia, but yet he was sitting there with the WV on and rooting on the Mountaineers. But he used to coach these Cincinnati Bearcats. I was actually at the Final Four, and I think it was 1991 maybe. I may be off on the year slightly, but maybe it was 92, okay? In Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the Cincinnati Bearcats were there. Nick the Quick. That was UNLV, and no, it was the Fab Five and all that stuff. Anyways, but that's my walking around knowledge of Cincinnati. Just haven't paid attention to them a lot. Who they are built like, though, is they seem to me like a traditional Big East team, like old school Big East team. Big, physical, long, can struggle to score at times. Kind of want to muck it up and fight you a little bit and make it real physical and all those things is kind of how they're built. Whereas like TCU was built to me like a traditional one of these very athletic SEC teams that where do they find these dudes? And then and they're a bit undisciplined at times. But when it's rolling, look out. Well, this is like the Big East version. But Calvin, here's the scary part for the Texas Tech fan. They start 6'8", 6'11", 7 foot. You have a hard time matching up against these kinds of teams. You just do on the glass and otherwise. So, really, they are their best offense are missed shots. sounds weird, but it's the truth. They just they go hammer their misses, man, and they don't shoot a ton of threes. And they have some injury concerns coming into this one. Johnny Newman may not play for them tomorrow. I'm not real sure what that looks like. He's one of their starters that went down in that West Virginia game, so we'll kind of keep an eye on that. But, I mean, I would guess that you're going to be a 4 to 5 point favorite, but this is a Cincinnati team that's lost 5 of 7, but they've got – how about this? They've got Houston and Iowa State next week. 2 of the best defensive teams in the country, much less the Big 12. So, they'll come in desperate for sure.
Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of walking around knowledge about the Bearcats either, at least within a recent era, other than Cincinnati is one of the first 48's favorite filming locations. I don't know if that's something you put in the tourism brochure, but as you're describing some things that they're able to do on the glass, definitely got my hair standing up because of what we just came off of. And of course, it's not like a new thing. It's been a challenge for Texas Tech there to just battle. And if you can get close enough, you probably have a chance to win ball games. And for the most part, we've seen them get over that hump. But there hasn't just been a day where Texas Tech has been dominating the board. So I'm sure that has been a focus leaving Fort Worth the other night. And I'm just curious to see how they bounce back because we haven't seen this team take many L's in the Big 12 Conference, haven't had to really bounce back from a ton of adversity as far as the scoreboard is concerned. And, I think the ball game against Houston obviously was a different kind of bounce back challenge because you just got housed. You got ran out of the gym practically. Against Texas Christian, you had opportunities that you let, kind of slip through your fingers, and you still had a chance there in the final minute, I think down by 3 with less than 60 seconds to go. So probably a different feeling. And I wonder if we see Tech come into this one with a bit of a different edge, maybe shaking off some frustration following that loss in Fort Worth.
Yeah, that's we're about to get into a few games because I think on paper, the Cincinnati and Central Florida's, you got back-to-back Saturday home games here. And those are kind of holy grail type territory, right? In that that's really where you're going to get the biggest crowd. It's probably the hardest to pull off the road upset on the Saturday as opposed to the weeknight. I don't know if there's any direct correlation there, but it's always felt that way to me. I mean, granted, I guess you did it last Saturday in Norman, but you're going to be expected to win these home games, like these back-to-back ones, and it's what separates the contender pretender. When you win the games you're supposed to, and you don't kind of assume too much. And so, yeah, you hope there's an edge. You've got an extra day of rest on them. And they're coached by, he's a guy, Wes Miller. I don't know a ton about him. He came from UNC Greensboro. He's been there since 2021, I guess. And he's 41. He's a very young guy, but he does a really good job. And when you see this team, when you see them go through warmups, you're going to be like, oh my! I mean, it's they're getting chewed up a bit. I think, having lost 5 of 7, but keep in mind, they beat TCU about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and that game was up in Cincinnati, but their only other wins are against BYU in Provo, mind you, and then Central Florida at home. Those are their 3 conference wins. But again, long, athletic, and they just rebound the heck out of the ball. And I know Grant is talked about it publicly, and he's trying to find ways to be better at this. But yeah, you've got to try to be better on the glass. And it's not, you don't have to be a great rebounding team. Just be good or pretty good on some of these nights. Just don't let there be like a large discrepancy. Let's just hang. It's like, if you're doing the tug of war, man, standoff, just don't get thrown in the pond. Just kind of hang in there as long as you can and let other aspects of your game take over with some of your shot making and things like that. So, but I'm curious how the fans will handle this one. Is there juice in this building? Does anybody play up the Mahomes-Kelsey thing? Seriously, because I was trying to find what could make this game more exciting, because this is a game where the Tech fans are going to be like, huh, okay, Cincinnati's here, and it's going to be the same way in Central Florida. They are vital. These are very important games. You must win them.
I know we've touched on, obviously, the battle on the boards, but curious about some other keys we could get to within this matchup. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and happy Super Bowl week to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And FanDuel has more ways than you can count for you to end this season with a dub, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4, not 5, not 6. Not only can you bet on who's going to win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which player will score the first touchdown, how many points are going to be scored, and so much more. National anthem action? That do anything for you? Check it out at FanDuel.com. New customers also joining today, and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. All you got to do, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Some of what we've seen recently from a Texas Tech perspective, I'll go ahead and take the first no-brainer key. Chance McMillian continue to score a lot. That may be #1 on my list. I mean, that's kind of changed, Chris, the dynamic of your bench from earlier in the season. Like, all right, can you get a combined, I don't know, 15 or so from like Walton and McMillian back when Walton was out of the starting lineup? I got a bit of a higher expectation now, and it may not even be necessarily, hey, it's got to be Chance McMillian, but there's some thought, even though we've seen it from him more recently, that either one of those guys could go off at any various points. So I imagine that's been mentioned in Cincinnati this week as well. Hey, this guy coming off of the bench has been white hot now for 2 consecutive games, and maybe he's a little less than white hot there in Fort Worth, but the reserve conversation has changed quite a bit over the last, week to 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, it really has. It's funny because Chance McMillian is and I think we talk about him as being a shooter. I tell you what we have slept on. He is a monster athlete. I mean, some of the athleticism, the alley-oop last week, he does a kind of reverse layup hanging in the air against TCU that showed a high level of, body control and leaping ability and all that. I mean, he's just a really, really good athlete. And I will tell you, he kind of dinged his ankle up at the tail end of that game the other night. But I think he's expected to be just fine and should play. And I mean, close to 100%. But he's certainly been somebody that they've done well with, man. And he's playing his best ball and maybe most consistent ball right now, which is the way this stuff is supposed to work. Some teams get worse as the year goes along. Some players get worse. Some teams get better as the year goes along. Some players get better. You always want to be in that latter category, and he's certainly doing that. And it's the consistency. I don't expect him to go for 27 every night out. That's unrealistic. And 6 made threes. I mean, we can expect it, but we're going to be disappointed. But he's starting to just be more of a steady force and figuring out ways to score and things like that. Because, the scouting reports are out there, and if you watch it closely, Kerwin and Chance, they're getting theirs at some level, but they're having to work harder for it because it's out. I mean, people know, let's see, 52% from 3, 42% from 3. Yeah, guys, don't let him catch it. Don't let him shoot it. Don't give him any space. All the stuff. And so you got to work a little harder. You got to put it on the floor, drive to the basket, and then you can kind of maybe that creates a little separation next time you get a catch. But it's been I think Chance and Kerwin, kind of that tandem in general, has been really fun to watch because one if not both have really been consistent, and it's kind of created this larger margin for error for you.
As we talk about some of the length earlier in the show and some of the physicality and things like that you might see from Cincinnati, it does have me wondering about our guy Warren Washington, who we did see get into the foul column a few too many times the other night against Texas Christian. Still found ways to be impactful, but I imagine that number 22 is going to factor in large for better or worse, depending on how he goes maybe the Red Raiders go in this one.
Yeah, and Warren is going to have his hands full. Aziz Bandango is he's actually a Utah Valley transfer. I don't know what it is with big men and Utah Valley transfers, but this is where I think Fardaz came from too. I think that's right. But yeah, Bandango is like averages about. They're very similar. They're not going to score traditionally a ton, although they can throw up the baby hook and the back to the basket shots on occasion. But it's a lot of being a lob threat. But then they're just both really good on the glass. But I think Bandango goes 7'2" and 7 foot, comma TOO, not 7'2", like the number, not yeah. So hopefully, yeah. I just when I said that, I was like, no, he's not 7'2". He's 7 as well. That's 7 foot as well. Anyway, but he averages about 8 or 9 boards a game. He's a constant lob threat. I thought he'll come in motivated. I would guess because Jesse Edwards from West Virginia, who is he might be 7'1", 7'2". He really got the best of Cincinnati in the paint and was hanging from the rim every time I looked up. And he went for 25 and 10 in that kind of upset over. Because keep in mind, Cincinnati in that game Wednesday night, there's 6:30 to go ish in this game in Morgantown. Cincinnati's up 60-50. They're up 10, and I'm thinking like, okay, well, I mean they're gonna roll in here off of a win, and then they just kind of slowly gave it back, and it ends up being I think a 4-point West Virginia win, 69-65. But Bandango, he's an athletic guy, and so yeah, Warren will need to match it certainly, and really win that matchup, if you will, if you want to look at it that way. But they've got some depth there in the paint as well, so that's that's something to pay attention to too.
I know that this guy has not been without any impact. We have seen him make an impact, but I feel like it's been a little while since we've really seen, Darion Williams have kind of an easy offensive night. I don't know if I should call anything easy, but it's been a little bit more of a grind. Maybe we're attributing that just to Big 12 play, but I'd love to see him have one of those that he had earlier in the season where he's, just 1 or 2 off rebound assist-wise from messing around with the triple-double or something like that. So, hey, no big ass, Darion. You just want to go ahead and fill up 3 statistical columns. But he's another one of those kind of X factors, I feel like, where when he does have one of those all-around impactful kind of days or nights, the Tech margin for error really grows.
Yeah, he had a couple of threes early the other night, but then he got in foul trouble, which is we had not really seen. When we were broadcasting the game the other night, I'm like, well, this is a bit different. This is new. Hadn't really seen Darion, and Warren, but really either one individually, but then especially not the combo of both deal with some foul trouble, and it altered the way the game was played and the way that Grant had to sub it in and out and all that. But it's like when Warren wasn't in the game, you certainly realized how valuable that he is. But the same was said about Darion too. There's just so many different things that he does that I think in these games that help you win them, and it doesn't always necessarily show up in the in the point column, but he wasn't as effective as he needed to be on the glass the other night, and just wasn't able to play the amount of minutes that you're used to seeing. So anyway, but yeah, he's certainly and he thankfully, we kind of glossed over this, but thankfully, because last Saturday he kind of came out of the game and he was getting his foot, ankle worked on. Missed some time down there at the end of the bench working on the trainer and all that. So, and then you had a chance this last game. So, again, you want to keep dodging these bullets, but yeah, D5 as they call him, he's been a vital part of what you're doing for sure.
I haven't seen him as a double-digit scorer since the Kansas State game. He did have 11 rebounds 2 games ago. He finds a way to impact a game, but would love to see him get back to something a little bit more consistent offensively, and maybe it starts against Cincinnati coming up tomorrow. Elsewhere in the Big 12 Conference coming up this weekend, They tip it off in Fort Worth first with the Longhorns visiting the Horned Frogs. K-State goes to Stillwater to take on the Cowboys. You got Houston and Kansas at 3 o'clock from Lawrence, number 4 and number 8. I wonder if the Cougars get a little welcome to the Big 12 down the stretch experience. Number 23, Oklahoma is in Orlando to hook up with UCF. And you got BYU on the road to take on West Virginia. And then at 7 o'clock, it's Iowa State and Baylor from Waco. I hope you got time for a Barca lounger outside of the time that you're calling a game, Chris, because there's plenty to take in tomorrow.
Yeah, there's some doozies on the old calendar tomorrow. Yeah, that Houston-Kansas game will get a lot of attention, and understandably so. If Houston goes in there and wins, because these two teams play each other twice. So, Kansas has got to make the return trip. And you know what? I know I've told everybody, hey, say a little something nice about the opposition the night before they go into Houston. Kansas, I probably will skip that one. I'll probably wish bad things there. But that is a really fascinating game because kind of like we're talking about Tech and Cincy, Houston and Kansas, it's like everything that Kansas is really bad at, Houston is really good at. Houston is deeper. They just are much more physical. Because Kelvin Sampson has said, on the first day of team meetings, like he kind of jokes about, he's like, hey, everybody raise your hand. Okay. And now this is who all goes after a loose ball or goes after a missed shot. Okay, so we're clear. Okay, the end. I don't want to talk about it again. And so this is their mindset. You're good at what you emphasize. And Kansas is just more finesse. They don't rely on the three much. There's a shorter rotation. So yeah, kind of a contrast in styles. Can't wait to see what that looks like, how it's called. Also will be fascinating because if there's one coach that can get some respect from from the officials, like an opposing coach in there, it would be Kelvin Sampson. So we'll see. The TCU Texas game I'm fascinated with. TCU's won 3 in a row. Texas is kind of starting to middle out, but if they can go in and win a Fort Worth, boy, that's a big time win. But if TCU wins it, I mean, again, they continue to kind of separate themselves with the top end. And then that one in Waco on Saturday night is very fascinating to me with the Cyclones rolling in, because you look at the rankings there, that's a top 15, top 20 matchup. And that's where you go. That's where you go next with that awful camera angle that they've got in the new Foster Pavilion, I guess it is. But yeah, doozy of a day tomorrow, and here for it.
I got to tell you, I'm interested in the Oklahoma UCF game. Oklahoma's lost 2 of their last 3, but both those came on their home floor, and they go to K-State. They get a win. I guess that might be one team that's like, nah, we're glad to get the hell out of our building. We'll take a trip to Orlando. But Central Florida's been a little prickly on their home floor, and then you've got BYU still holding on to a top 25 ranking as well, as they go to West Virginia, who has also been a little prickly on their home floor, even though they're an 8-13 basketball team.
Yeah, and again, West Virginia is going to be sneaky here down the stretch. You don't play them for another month or so, but that's just going to be. I'll be interested to see where it goes, because they're a different team right now than they were with some of the injuries. Now the guys, the Edwards kid specifically, and Central Florida, that's. They had Baylor down, I think, the other night, and then just couldn't hold on. And Baylor, I think, was just saying, we're tired of losing. We've lost 3 in a row. Let's do something about it. And then Langston Love went nuts. Baylor is one of these teams too that is just, as I'm talking about the league in general, people have slept on them. They've lost those 3 in a row, been uncharacteristic. They lost 3 in a row last year, but they are also playing a couple of freshmen. And I think those guys are going to continue to emerge and be a lot better as we roll along here. Like in a few weeks, they're going to be better than they are now, kind of thing. And so they could be somebody that you don't want to have to deal with down the tail end. And the Red Raiders still have 2 games against these Bears. But yeah, Central Florida and Johnny Dawkins' team has proven to be a tough out. Cincinnati and Central Florida, very similar, well coached. They've got pieces, but it's like they're realizing the night in, night out thing that you've got going here. So
that's what I was going to say. In their previous leagues, these are probably much different experiences as far as just like cruising to the NCAA tournament or whatever. Maybe that's a little too much, but I was thinking the same thing about Cincinnati. Like, good basketball team. How good are you in the Big 12 conference? And I guess we're going to find out down the stretch.
Yes, we are. I mean, it's hard to survive because there's people that have talked about Cincinnati. I mean, their net is going to be around like the 33 or 34 range. I think Texas Tech's net ranking right now is like around 28, 29. So, like, as far as the data goes, that's meaningful, they're very similar. Central Florida is a bit below that. But people will talk about Cincinnati as an NCAA tournament team, but it's hard to survive we've lost 5 of 7 stretch unless you get it really turned around. I mean, Cincinnati lost, I think, 6 in a row last year and won the whole thing. But but they ended up turning it around and kind of just rolling toward the tail end. I mean, Cincinnati's going to have to, they can't continue to be middling, or they're going to have to start rattling them off if they want to get into the tournament. It's just hard to survive losing 5 of 7 stretch.
Man, and hoping for a great environment from United Supermarkets Arena, because this is really like a seesaw kind of game for Texas Tech as far as what your profile is going to be as a team down the stretch in the Big 12 Conference. I think we've had to agree for the most part up to this point. You've been playing with some house money, particularly because of what you've done on the road and some of the wins that you've gotten there. But I think in general, you have exceeded expectations, certainly mine, for year number 1 under Grant McCasland as far as your Big 12 resume is concerned. Holding serve on your home floor, I think, still kind of keeps you with some of that house money, Chris. But if you slip up and you drop one like this, or even what we talked about upcoming with UCF, then I think you could spin very, very quickly back into like, all right, when we get closer to March, are we going to be having bubble conversations, or is this going to be a team that securely is there? Both of those realities are still out there. And it starts with these kind of games on your home floor as to whether you're going to take this path or that path.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're what are you like 11-0 at home so far, or something like that? Haven't lost, but yeah, these are the sneaky tough games. These are the ones that everybody looks at and goes, okay, sure, we're going to win. But like not everybody does, and you look up on a Saturday and you see, hey, Texas Tech wins in Norman. TCU goes and beats Baylor in triple overtime, and it's the road wins that make the news, right? And so you just don't want to make the news for the wrong reasons tomorrow and over the weekend. But and again, I'm saying that it's like when you look at the schedule, like Grant or his team is not going to look at it and go, yeah, sure, we got no. That couldn't be further from the truth. I'm just saying, like, people like you and I, you start going through it, and you're like, well, yeah, surely you'll get that one, but. Like I said, not everybody does, man.
There is no Shirley in the Big 12 conference.
No,
right?
Yeah, don't call me Shirley. Yeah, and I'll tell you who else will be in the house tomorrow night. Joey McGuire's having just to work a little football into this conversation. He's having his kind of fantasy camp this weekend, which you get a bunch of the faithful. There's a small number, I would guess, is somewhere between 30 and 50 guys. They kind of hang out and all that. They usually I've been involved in some of these before, but they are largely overserved, and they get pressed and pushed to the limit on a weekend like that. But it's an ultimate hangout, And Joey and his staff do a phenomenal job. A lot of those guys, Cowan, are on RedRaidersports.com, and it can be ugly, it can be hilarious, it can be. Not a lot of sleep, but that group will be at the game, so I know they'll bring the energy, they'll bring the passion, and
I think we should get these guys maybe out at halftime, like when you have the kids play a quick game. Let's get these overserved boys out at halftime for a quick, 21 or whatever we need to do. You want to see some grown men die playing a full court basketball game?
Nobody wants to see that. I tell you what I would go for, though, is if they want to do like the bat relay. You know what this is? Like when you put the bat on your forehead and you have to spin around it 10 times and you come up and you got to run to the other end and
keep the mop buckets handy, boys. Keep the mop buckets handy.
That's right.
All right.
Anyway, so maybe we'll see some of those fine folks out there. I know we've got some listeners in that group that pay attention to this show. So anyway, enjoy yourself. Mix in the water.
That's right. You can go longer. You mix in the water.
Or 3, yeah.
Suck it in, boys. Suck it in. You're representing Texas Tech tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoyed it all week long. We'll be back on the other side of the ball game for better or worse to digest whatever goes down from the USA. Looking forward to it, man. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, keep hope alive, everybody. See you at the arena tomorrow. Enjoyed it. Enjoy the weekend. Callan, appreciate the time, sir.
Of course. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. We appreciate you being out there and hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.